And the first thing she said to me was amazingly disarming, and I've held on to it ever since. She said, everybody here who's on council ran against council, so you're among friends. And immediately I started learning and understanding that things just aren't as politically sharp as you might think they are.
Welcome to another episode of the Gov Gab radio podcast. I'm your host, Brian Andreyko. Thanks again for being a part of another one, and excited to take a little trip north where we visit with Eagan, Minnesota Mayor Mike Maguire. Mayor Maguire was on the city council from 2003 to 2007, and now he's serving his fourth term as mayor for the city. And we talk about a lot of things from long-range planning to working cohesively and collectively with the council. And a lot of different committees that are set up. And really the whole point is, how do we give back to the citizens and really the employees that are coming into work in Eagan each and every day? So have a pretty wide-ranging conversation on a variety of topics, and I think you guys will really enjoy this one with Mayor Maguire. So without further ado, let's jump into my chat today with Mayor Mike Maguire. Mayor Maguire, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Well, thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is really neat. Obviously, as we go through and talk with some different, leaders across the country, it's cool to talk to different folks just to see their background and why they're kind of getting involved in their local communities and so on. And I want to start with you, actually, because I'm curious, and I know you're kind of from, different parts of the country and obviously settled in Eagan there. But I'm curious, when did you, I guess, the idea of getting started and getting involved in the community, and whether it was the current community you're in or maybe it was another one that you moved from, but I'm just kind of curious when that idea kind of started in your mind, and we'll take it from there.
Well, I grew up kind of interested in politics and policy, and I moved from the East Coast out to southern Minnesota and met my wife there. In southern Minnesota, and when we got married, we had kind of a shared value of interest in politics and in public policy and community service. And the more we became invested financially in our community, and we put down roots, bought a house, and had a son, it was just a natural to get involved in the community. We started following local politics and got involved in our church, and eventually, I just decided right about the time we had our first son, actually, our only son, to run for the city council. I'd been to a couple of council debates and had some concerns in our community about the way that citizens were being listened to, and I had some experience running campaigns on a statewide level, and put those learnings to work to get elected to the city council. And then after a term on the city council, I was encouraged by the departing mayor to run for mayor. So it's been an interesting trip, and it's been about 2 years now since we made that decision.
And were you involved in any committees or anything with the city prior to, or did you just say, I'm going to go straight shot, go for council and start there?
It's, the usual path would be to be involved in an advisory committee or something like that. And we have a number of them in our city here in Eagan. I didn't go that route. I actually just came out of the community. I was engaged in a church that had some affordable housing concerns that it was sharing with the council at the time. And I was occasionally a warm body representing that group in a council meeting, and just became kind of interested that way, really. And then there was a local issue as well that I took kind of a profile on, a little bit testing the waters for whether or not a run for council would be a viable thing. I've always had an interest in running for office, so it just made sense.
And what you mentioned, the outgoing mayor kind of mentioned you, maybe tapped you on the shoulder, said, hey, maybe this is something you'd like to do. What was appealing about, obviously being on the council, there's a bunch of other folks there and you're kind of working now to be kind of the head guy, if you will. What was appealing about running for mayor And that's something you ever wanted to do before you got tapped for that, or?
Uh, Not necessarily, although, I mean, I first ran for city council, thinking I was going to use it as a stepping stone to go to the state legislature, where I at the time thought my interests were more and certainly seemed politically sexier. But the mayor and I ran for he, mayor, and me, city council at the same time, and we were first elected at the same time. And he and I were new to the council at the time. I think we shared some of similar concerns on how the council was communicating with city staff and with the community. So he and I were really close to one another when he was elected. And so when he had decided he was only going to serve one term, and I had learned a lot, quite frankly, just in my first 2 years of being on the council, how to work with other council members. I discovered in short time that there's not as much politics to a city council as you might think there are, and certainly as much as you think they are from the outside. And so to some extent, I kind of calmed down and stopped picking fights with my colleagues and started working with them. And it was a very productive council at the time. So when the mayor tapped me and said, I think you can help keep this going and keep this council moving in a productive direction for the community, that was a really attractive opportunity. I wanted to continue the work that he and I had done in moving in that direction of the city council. And it's been really a progression that we've been able to maintain for the last 20 years in this community, which I think has really strengthened the community and helped it become a more successful city and a stronger community.
Is there one thing you wish you knew prior to either running for council or running for mayor that, obviously now, and maybe you can share that advice with others that may be thinking about that someday?
Yeah, well, I think when I first ran for council, one of the things the kind of fascinating, it's a short story, but I went to a holiday party that was hosted by the mayor who was leaving the council, and who I had basically run for city council in some pretty sharp criticism of or opposition to. I first walked into the door at her holiday party, and I'm this young council member elect who people don't really know much except for we just won a campaign to go to city council. And the first thing she said to me was amazingly disarming, and I've held on to it ever since. She said, everybody here who's on council ran against council, so you're among friends here. And immediately I started learning and understanding that things just aren't as politically sharp as you might think they are. That doesn't mean there aren't disagreements and things, but one of the things I discovered on the way to being mayor and on the way to the council is that people really do work together more than you think they do, and I mean it in genuine ways, not in trying to rig the system ways, but they have disagreements productively and amicably, and the local level politics just isn't, I think, what it might appear to be from the outside, or what it might appear to be if you haven't really seen it in action before.
One of the things that always appealing to me, especially from, looking from like a mayor standpoint is, obviously you're juggling a full-time job and career and also kind of running the city there as well. Obviously for those not in the position, what's the time commitment look like on your end? How do you juggle those things? How do you prioritize
Sure.
so that you can kind of get everything done you need to?
Well, I have progressively juggled those things, but then also reduced the number of things that I juggle. So when I was first elected mayor, I was working full time, and I'm fortunate. I have a wife who's very supportive personally of this work and of the time commitment, and so progressively, I've become more and more committed to the mayor's job, and I've voluntarily kind of reduced my professional commitments. It's very difficult to balance it and work a full-time job, especially when you're working for somebody else. I found that I would sometimes have to be committed to the mayor's job, feel like I was stealing from the employer by not reducing my commitment to the employer. So eventually I reduced my commitment to my employer to a part-time ending so I could better commit to the mayor's job. And then we had a workforce reduction, and I had to leave that part-time job. Consulted for a little bit, but it was more work than it was worth trying to balance it with the mayor's job. So progressively, I haven't had to do those juggles. When I started out, a couple of commitments I had to make was, I meet every Monday morning with my city administrator. Some might call it a city manager, and that's something that I've continued to do regardless of what my work situation is, and then juggle that around. The more I'm not having to juggle a full-time job, the more I have an opportunity to have meetings during the day with city staff or with a developer who wants to propose something in the city. The other thing that I did early on, I had a young son who I wanted to be a good parent to. So I've kind of always made the rule that, I'm the mayor of the community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I really put up a boundary around my family weekend and tried to avoid doing city business of any sort during the weekends. Can't always do that, but it's a priority to kind of say only the most important things on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Friday night. It helps to kind of maintain those balances, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, are there any, and you mentioned the meeting that you do every, Monday morning. Are there any daily habits, any routines that you stick to, maybe things that are important, again, to keep you structured, to maybe keep you sane at some point?
Yeah, well, where I'm not working at this point an additional job, my work week is most structured in the beginning of the week. That Monday morning appointment is an important part of the routine for me. And I think for my city administrator, we have a council meeting usually the Tuesday following that. So that, starts me off and starts him off with any questions that I think me or the council might have in that meeting. We also have a chance to touch bases on a number of different scheduling options or on an upcoming event that week where he's handing off my talking points. So that Monday morning meeting is a real important part of the weekly routine. And I don't, the job isn't as daily as much as it is kind of weekly and monthly. So that's an opportunity to kind of reset and set down what does the week look like from a mayoral perspective, and then I can work my personal schedule in around that. Of course, I'm active beyond the city in a number of different kind of volunteer mayoral groups. So city staff is always keeping track of those appointments and mileage and any materials that I need for those meetings and things like that.
And what's kind of, obviously you mentioned all these different things you're involved in. Is there a favorite part of the job of being mayor, something that you like the most?
Well, in the context of an actual meeting or an issue that's in front of the community that maybe has some attention, the most satisfying thing for me always is to find the reasonable middle that reasonably balances out as many people's interests as possible and allows the community, the neighborhood, the developer to move forward in a positive way. And that's always feels effective and reassuring. Beyond that, quite frankly, it's the opportunity I have to sit down over a cup of coffee with a developer or a county representative to talk about a community issue or to work out relations between different governmental bodies and get things done that keep things moving, even if it's really, really quietly. Forward in a positive direction. We have a really strong city here in Eagan, located just about 20 minutes from the airport, and we are a real good employment center. Anything we can do to kind of keep that investment and reinvestment going and keeping this community moving forward is very satisfying. And even if it is at the simplest meeting, because it takes that relationship to be able to bring an issue before the council and to successful completion. So it's all part of the process, and that process of getting to win and getting to yes is what I most enjoy.
Yeah, and is there and you can kind of go back to the city council days as well, but is there one or two decisions, you've been extremely proud of, whether they're very high public profile or maybe again those some of those ones that not many people talk about, but they were really
Yeah.
important.
Well, I think of two, and they're not, there's back in the city council days, and then once as mayor, we had some particular community controversies around golf courses. They weren't easy decisions, and there are some people who came out with hurt feelings, and some people who came out not having seen the outcome they would have liked, and that caused some neighborhood fractures and things like that. But I think that those were important decisions, and it's important to step up and make them, even when they're hard. So I think about those. A decision that I'm proud of because I think it was a solid decision that helped move this community forward is a few years ago I really worked and advocated as mayor with my council for the city to go through a kind of 20-year visioning plan and engage our citizens in a variety of ways to help us work together to define a vision for what they want the community to be in 20 years. Because I really thought that the Council of Five would be well served to hear from the community more about what they want in the community than to just kind of rely on our own imagination. Having done the job of city council member and mayor for, at that time, a decade or more for each of us, which is a good stability, but it's also important, I think, to go back and touch base again with the community after you've been running for re-election so often. And you might still be holding the same vision that you started with. So refreshing that vision, and we call that Eagan Forward, and we came out with a 20-year vision that really has started to take root and guide our city staff, our city council members as well. And I think it was a really productive conversation that we had. So I was really proud with the initial decision to really encourage my council members to do it. And, they weren't resistant to it, but it took some encouraging because, we put some financial resources into it and want to make sure that it's a vision that's going to help us move forward.
How do you prioritize those, especially if there's a lot of citizen engagement and they're bringing up a lot of ideas? Is there any way that you guys, I don't know what tactics you use to prioritize, or is just kind of looking at, hey, here's where we want to go with the community and this is what's going to direct us? Anything you can share? Or?
Well, out of the process came kind of 6 strategies really, and they it was a range of different things from physical amenities like bike and pedestrian trails to making Eagan a more welcoming community and recognizing our demographic and racial and cultural diversity and the increasing numbers on those kinds of issues as well. So they aren't specific policies, and we prioritize things to some extent the way we always have. There's a certain set of what I would suggest are fiduciary responsibilities to the community, and that that goes around raising revenue and providing vital services. And we have a fairly limited menu of services that we provide as a city. Obviously, public safety, and then public works and plowing the streets and things like that. And then you look for how within doing those fiduciary responsibilities, and through things like your parks department or your communication department, you can work on those community connections and at the same time be working on the infrastructure with public works that helps build the bike paths and the bike lanes. And you work with parks department on how you can integrate public art into your parks programming, because those are kinds of things that bring your community together and make for not just a successful city, but a strong community. And I think that's the kind of vibrance that people looking for a place to live want to see, that companies looking for a place to locate and bring their employees to want to see. And at the end of the day, if we are successful, at building a strong community and setting those directions out there as a vision of who we want to be. The fiduciary responsibilities come when people see that vision and they want to invest in your community. And that's what I'm really excited about in terms of what we've managed to do here in Eagan. That's what I like to refer to as our secret sauce. But it really is a roadmap for community vibrance, no matter where you are, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like some really good foundation you guys got going there, and excited to see how that growth takes form over the next several years, and obviously into that
Yeah,
20-year
yeah.
plan.
Well,
What is
we're very fortunate. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, what is from, and if you look from the opposite side, I'm an optimist as it is, but a glass half full guy. But if we took the other approach, like what do you find is maybe the biggest challenge that you guys are and either anticipating, maybe you're seeing now, or you're anticipating over the next few years that you guys have to deal with?
Well, we have kind of a fiscally conservative tradition here in this city, and that's not just about dollars and cents. It's also about how we make sure to kind of keep a rein on what our outlook is. So we've had a very successful last few years in terms of growth, but we've certainly gone through those periods where we've struggled. We've had to cut back on staff, and so one of the things is that when the going's good, recognize that it's not always going to be going that way, and to be smart and conservative in how much you project and how you manage the resources that you have, and how you make sure to keep some of it aside, because the good times aren't going to roll every year and grow every year. There are going to be some downtimes, and you want to be prepared for that. So we do a really solid job, I think, on that front of not getting out in front of our skis too much. And then, from my perspective, in this community in particular, the biggest challenge that I see is we've added some important corporate citizens in the last few years. Right now, Eagan is a net employment job center, which means more people come to Eagan to work every day than go to other cities from Eagan to work every day. We're projected to have about 80,000 jobs in this community about 20 years from now. As the city council in the city intensifies the number of jobs in the city, I think we also have to keep a focus, and it's a challenge, keeping a focus on also having homes for those employees, for those jobs that are affordable at every price point in the circuit. So for me, affordable housing kind of comes full circle as one of the reasons why I initially got involved in the city council, and one of the biggest challenges I see coming forward. And it's a matter of being victims of our own success, but then also providing for that continued success and that continued foundation.
Why do you feel, you mentioned and maybe it is, the housing opportunities there and, those type of things. Why do you think jobs are coming in so much to the city versus others surrounding you guys? Is there certain thing maybe it's part of that secret sauce you mentioned, but is there certain things you guys are trying to do, or?
Well, you can't underestimate the value of location, and that's a significant part of it. We are the community itself and the local government. When we have the evaluations from citizens, our city staff gets high marks. I think we the quality of city service really is excellent. But that also, I think we have a conservative approach to funding the government. It doesn't mean that we are unreasonable about our taxes, but we keep them low and we run an efficient machine. And I think the businesses and employers appreciate that. Our taxes are a little bit lower or on par with most of our neighbors. Here in the Twin Cities region, we have some growth property tax-based sharing programs that really discourage, I think, productively cities from competing directly with one another. So You don't see the city of Eagan giving out a whole lot of subsidies to try to bring jobs in. We tend to let the community speak for itself as a value. And you also can't underestimate the notion that we have 67,000 people here, and that's that creates a market for retailers that they want to serve as well. So when you're successful with the big employers, you have opportunities for more business to business, as well as more opportunities for people to do business with the employees and the citizens and residents of the community. So it's a systematic thing that we just have been very fortunate in being able to put together and keep going here in Eagan.
And I kind of want to, end on, some advice maybe, and this is, kind of the open forum part I like to have where,
Yeah.
and I'm going to take it on two fronts. So maybe advice for other mayors or other leaders of cities around the country. And then secondly, maybe for folks that want to get involved in local government and they want to kind of give back their time. What would advice maybe share to both of those parties on maybe improving their communities and also the folks that, again, want to be involved and volunteer and those type of things?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe twofold. I think in terms of advice to other mayors, and I think every mayor knows his community, his or her community, and or their council, and can be don't need my advice, I guess. But I've always tried to take this job, and statutorily it's a non-partisan job. That's something I take seriously. My colleagues take seriously, and we've built up a history and a trust to be really fly the flag of our party as our city, and that's always our focus. And we don't get distracted by the politics that goes on above our heads. So, I encourage any mayors to try to build up that atmosphere with your council. And it starts with being able to trust one another. It starts with being able to disagree with one another, but also move on. And we have some rules on our city council that I think work really well for us. We try to praise in public and criticize in private. And once the council has taken a vote, as council members and as a mayor, we don't go back and talk about or mull over that vote with our colleagues again. It's just a matter of we resolve issues and then we move on, and we do it professionally. We maintain our relationship. So the more you can kind of have a professional relationship and foster that environment of respect with your full council, I think it pays back in how effectively you can work with one another. On the community side, for anybody who is thinking about getting interested in their community, the encouragement I would have is learn before you get involved, and do it for the right reasons. I think we're in an environment these days where I think people are quick to get up in arms and emotional, and quick to see adversaries where there might be colleagues or partners, and I think too often these days getting involved is sometimes getting involved for the vocal reasons, but maybe not the right ones in terms of helping your community. So if you're looking at the council and you're wanting to get involved, if you're wanting to get involved because you want to make a change, do a little bit of research and make sure that change is something that is for the better in the community, and not just something that looks politically shiny at the time.
Mayor Maguire, this is awesome having you on and sharing a lot of that journey and insight into the city there. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you taking time out today.
Well, thanks. I appreciate your taking the time with me as well, Brian. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the best out there.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining in this episode, and we really appreciate if you head over to iTunes, leave us a quick review, give us a rating. We certainly appreciate any feedback you can share so we can make this podcast better each and every episode. Thanks again for listening in. I hope you guys have a phenomenal day. Take care.